Hey there, thank you for joining me once again to learn about Mercury through the signs. So, of course, we're going to start with Mercury in Aries. And while I got to tell you, I don't mind Mercury in Aries as long as they're not mad and arguing with you. They can be a lot of fun. They tend to be fast talkers. They can even be a smartass at times. And unfortunately, on the negative side, they may be a little quick to temper and rather impatient. But I tell you, it's a bit of a roller coaster ride sometimes with Mercury and Aries people, but in general, as long as things are positive, they can be a lot of fun. Now, given other things going on in the horoscope, depending on what planets that Mercury and Aries may connect with, for example, if it was trining Mars in a fire sign, Leo or Sagittarius, you may find that Mercury and Aries is good with sports, good with hand-eye coordination, things like that. When you have Mercury and Aries in conflict, well, look out because they're going to look out for themselves first, and they will make sure that they're taken care of and their family and their needs are looked after first. When it comes to money and trade and commerce, which of course Mercury rules, in general, Mercury and Aries might be pretty good at making a buck, and given all other things considered, Mercury and Aries does lend itself to working in the fields of engineering, graphic design, arts, sports, automotive and manufacturing industries sometimes. And yes, they may actually work with fire or heat in some sort of way. For example, your HVAC person might be having Mercury in Aries because they tend to be attracted to metal as well. Now, Mercury in Taurus, quite different from Mercury in Aries. They tend to be slow in the way of talking and thinking. They can be very thorough, which is very good in some cases, not so good if you're standing behind them in a line. But do not push a Mercury in Taurus. They do not like to be told to hurry up, get moving, you're too slow. That's when you're going to find out that Mercury in Taurus can be a bit stubborn and may, even when they have anger, react like that traditional bull in the china shop you often hear that is described Taurus people sometimes. They can be very creative and artistic, especially Mercury in Taurus can lend itself to writing. And of course, they do like money and material possessions. They do like their luxuries as well. And Mercury in Taurus tends to like money so much they often work in banks or with insurance, investments, or in some other fashion where they get to earn lots of money and have lots of money. In some cases, with Mercury afflicted in Taurus, they may not be very good at saving money and they may spend too much, being too much attracted to luxuries. But in general, with positive aspects, Mercury in Taurus does attract money. So if you're single, look for a Mercury in Taurus person to be married to. They may be a very good provider as well. Mercury in Gemini, one of the signs that it rules, as you can imagine, talk, 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 and never ending. I can even use the term verbal diarrhea for Mercury in Gemini most times. If, of course, it is afflicted to Saturn or other things, you may have a Mercury in Gemini that's not as talkative, but that's pretty unusual. In general, they can be real fast talkers when they get into trouble as well. They do tend to burn the candle at both ends, and they take on too much, and they make promises they don't keep. And yes, Mercury in Gemini is one of the signs that thinks telling you they're going to do something is as good as doing it, not necessarily. So they're very good at weaseling themselves out of difficult situations and arguments, and good luck winning an argument with Mercury and Gemini because they're pretty fast. Now, it's said in astrology that Gemini fibs, Libra lies, and Pisces outwits them all. But in general, yeah, Mercury and Gemini might be prone to fibbing, but they're more likely prone to hyperbole. They love to exaggerate. They love to stretch the truth a little bit without really believing or thinking they're lying. But oh yeah, they can really spin a yarn, Mercury and Gemini. And yes, because of that, they can actually be a lot of fun. They're very good with their hands very often. They may be very, very good at sports that involve the hands, things like squash and tennis, soccer, pool, and anything where they're using their hands, not soccer. That's the feet. Although maybe, who knows? Mercury in Gemini, because Gemini rules the shoulders, the pectoral girdle as it's called, they tend to be very good, as I say, with their hands and with their arms. They are not the best Mercury placement with money. It tends to burn a hole in their pocket, and sometimes they're just a little too fast with it. Remember, another term for Mercury is quicksilver, and very often with Gemini planets, you get quicksilver reactions. So, oh yeah, Mercury and Gemini can be very good at sports because you have to be very good at reacting. And they're very good on their feet, thinking, speaking, etc., as long as they don't say too much, which of course they're very prone to. Mercury and Gemini can be great teachers, educators, and trainers of all kinds. And when Mercury and Gemini is blocked, though, watch out for anger and frustration. Of course, any sign could get angry, but how they express that anger may be very different depending on their sign. And with Mercury and Gemini, oh boy, do they know how to tell you off, because they can be very creative with words for sure. They do like to talk, they do like to joke, and yes, some of them are excellent jugglers, and they are the tricksters of the zodiac, remember, so maybe they even like a little magic. Certainly Mercury and Gemini can be a lot of fun, sometimes a little too much if you are more composed of earth and water signs. With Mercury and Cancer, one thing that strikes me about them, they often have a great memory, and because of that, don't lie to a Mercury and Cancer because they remember what you said, and they'll catch you up in a lie. Oh, and they might be very upset about that. They do tend to be honest people. They can be very methodical. They might be a little bit more slow thinking like Mercury and Taurus. But interestingly enough, Mercury in the earth and water signs, when it's very positively aspected to outer planets like Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus, and even Neptune, they might actually have a genius intellect. So don't think that they're always so slow. And that's true for Mercury in Cancer. I've seen a lot of Mercury in Cancer aspecting Saturn, and they really are extremely smart people. They love to talk about their family, of course, and also their home and their possessions. And, you know, they do like money as well, Cancer after all, right? So they may be enjoying to talk about investing or how much money they may have. They're not necessarily so secretive, but they're also not usually a braggart. But believe you me, in fact, Mercury in Cancer can hide how much money that they have because they can be very private. They also can be a little bit tight with the dollar, but that's not to say that they can't be generous either. In fact, they're very generous to their family in general. With Mercury in Leo, another fixed sign, well, they can be a bit stubborn like Mercury in Taurus. The one thing I find with Mercury in Leo is they often think, I'm right. They're right all the time. It's a little bit of the Leo nature to want to always be on the top, so they always want to be the best. But because of that, they can be quite high achievers. Now, it's been said that Leo sometimes is a bit of the slowest sign of the zodiac when it comes to education, thinking, and intelligence. But again, with Mercury and Leo aspecting Saturn, Uranus, or other planets, they can be quite brilliant and very fast like the fire signs are. Now, they do like to spend money on luxuries. They may love travel. Sometimes Mercury and Leo may like to lord it over people a little bit, you know, kind of be flashy and show off. They may be very fond of showing that they have money by jewelry and other luxury items that they do like to show off. Remember, Leo likes attention, right? But their leadership abilities make them actually, especially in school, they're often the varsity sports person and, you know, very often the homecoming queen or king. They get noticed at school. They know from a very early age that people who get noticed get the opportunities. So Mercury and Leo might be very politically oriented even in school and certainly later in life. Mercury and Leo also makes very good executives, sales ability, leaders of all kind, and because Leo is associated with the performing arts, film, stage, theater, they can be great directors and producers. And in general, they like to be the boss. That's why they are the directors and the producers more often perhaps than the performers. Again, they can have great executive ability, and very often, like the other fixed signs, Mercury and Leo can be reliable. All the fixed signs you can usually rely on to be there for you when they need. So whether they are able to offer an ear when you're upset and listen to all your problems, they're usually really good for that. And they can also be quite wise. Remember, Leo also has traits that are very fatherly, like Cancer is motherly. So yes, Mercury and Leo can be some wonderful friends as long as you don't cross them or try to push them around. And then you'll find out they can be a little dictatorial and a little bit pushy and bullying even sometimes when the Mercury and Leo is afflicted. With Mercury in Virgo, you have it in its own sign again, at least to date. and also it is elevated in Virgo. So you tend to have a pretty good combination with Mercury and Virgo. Often it can really save a difficult chart because they're so smart, and they're immutable signs, so they're good at getting through things and adapting, right? They really display the true Virgo traits of being logical and practical and critical and analytical. And on that critical part, they're blunt. And if you ask a Mercury and Virgo, oh, what do you think of my new hairdo or my new outfit? They'll tell you, and be ready for the truth. They do not hold back. Now, Mercury and Virgo at times as well can be a little nitpicky. They may have digestive issues as well, because Virgo relates to the digestive system. So Mercury and Virgo may be a little bit picky about their food and diet because they're prone to digestive issues, food intolerances, or they're just picky. They may love to complain, and sometimes, like all the mutable signs, they may interfere in things that they shouldn't. They may share opinions that maybe they should have kept to themselves. But in relationships, they do tend to perhaps at times communicate too much, and at other times not so much, because they tend to worry a bit, and be a bit neurotic or anxious, so they may keep some things to themselves, or they'll be the type that will whine or complain. It really depends on what other planets are involved with Mercury in aspect. Sometimes their bluntness does get them into trouble, and as I say, they can be a little bit of a busybody. Sometimes they might be the type who likes to gossip about neighbors and such. Now with Mercury and Libra, you have a good-natured Mercury position there. Libra tends to be charming, easygoing, and sweet-tempered. And yes, Mercury in Libra is an air sign, so it loves to talk. And oh yeah, they like to talk about themselves and their own problems, and yes, their relationships and their own experiences and marriages and partnerships and all the other things that Mercury in Libra is involved with. Mercury in Libra is usually very concerned with justice and fairness and equity for all, social justice perhaps even. So Mercury in Libra can be very good in the field of law. Doesn't matter what kind, whether it is like police or as a lawyer or a judge, for example. Mercury in Libra can be very discerning and very sophisticated, very smart as well, and they'll be the first one sometimes to tell you that or to show it. They do like to be noticed as well, like Leo likes attention. So yes, Mercury in Libra does like to indicate how good they are at a lot of things. But you know what? They're usually so easygoing, and they can be very flattering, sometimes a little too much, but they certainly can make you feel good, and they can talk you out of a bad mood very often because they also can be just as good listening as they are talking. They may lie a little bit. Remember I said Gemini's fib, Libra's lie, and Pisces outwits them all in general. So Mercury in Libra, well, if it's afflicted, they may be on the wrong side of the law for sure and be breaking the law instead of making it. In fact, it's often been said with Mercury and sometimes Mars and Libra, they're either the lawmakers or the lawbreakers and maybe something in between. Generally, Mercury in Libra has a great social conscience, and they really do pay attention to what's going on out in the world, and they will complain about injustices and prejudice and such things as well. Now, with Mercury in Scorpio, you have a brighter Mercury placement than you may think, being in the sign of Scorpio, which we think of as being kind of morose and watery and negative, but Scorpio hides the fact that they have a very bright disposition at times, and they can be a lot of fun. They have a great sense of humor as well. But I guarantee with Mercury and Scorpio, when they're expressing their humor, it's not far from the toilet or from other icky subjects perhaps, and they may be very irreverent with their humor and in fact quite sarcastic. Now they can be critical as well, but usually not overtly so. They are a fixed sign, so if you come at them in any aggressive way, you'll get it right back. But Mercury and Scorpio normally isn't going to want to be on the attack, but they will not take an attack very easily. In fact, they can be quite vindictive, especially with their words. And yes, all the fixed sign Mercuries might be even a little bit mean and cruel if you push them too far. That's the nature of fixed signs. Mercury and Scorpio might be very good with money, just as good with money as Taurus and Mercury in the earth signs. Mercury in the water signs in general may be very good with money. They can be a little tight with the dollar, and Mercury and Scorpio actually may do well by investing, whether it be real estate or stock market or whatever. Mercury and Scorpio is very often attracted to working for insurance companies in particular and banks. And sometimes Mercury and Scorpio do those kinds of jobs that we would not do because we don't like to get our hands dirty or what have you. They may be actually very wealthy someday as long as that Mercury isn't heavily afflicted and they don't make foolish purchases or foolish investments. Mercury and Scorpio plans ahead and they are a very resourceful sign. So when it comes to money and possessions and wealth, oh yeah, they can be very resourceful when it comes to that as well. Mercury and Sagittarius, oh, they love to talk, just like the Mercury and Gemini and the other mutable signs, and they love to share their opinions. Sometimes when afflicted, Mercury and Sagittarius likes to shove their opinions down your throat. They always think they're right, like Mercury and the other fire signs, and sometimes they may be a bit much, and they may even be a bit arrogant, but I gotta tell you, they're usually well educated, and if not, they're still very smart. So what a Mercury and Sagittarius says might often be quite accurate and the truth. When it comes to the truth, although Sagittarius isn't known to be a lying sign, I do find that, they may to protect their own interests as a rule. Mercury and Libra may lie more to protect your feelings, but Mercury and Sagittarius for their own benefit sometimes, but they're not usually a dishonest sign. They just look out for themselves first sometimes, and that's more important than being honest. They may be good with friends and social life and things like that. They're very sociable, of course. They love to spin a yarn. They have a great sense of humor. They love practical jokes, sometimes verging on a little bit mean at times. Sagittarius does like to be top of the heap. They are ruled by Jupiter, so they're similar to Leo sometimes in that fashion. All the fire signs, they do like to take care of themselves, and they are competitive. So Mercury and Sagittarius may also be very good with sports, games, quizzes, tests, and things like that. They often ace them. They may be a little bit facile and flattering like Mercury and Libra, but in general, you want to be around a Mercury and Sagittarius because they make you feel good about yourself. With Mercury and Capricorn, they're the planners of the zodiac. They like to plan things out long term. They look ahead to the future. And yes, they may like to complain like Mercury and Cancer and the other cardinal signs. And I got to tell you, if you think Mercury and Virgo or Scorpio is blunt, I think Mercury and Capricorn aces them, because I always love how Mercury and Capricorn will get right to the point. They tell it like it is, whether you like it or not. But you know what? We need those people in the world because they help get rid of the craziness and the fantasy and all the silly things that some of us fall into that we shouldn't. So Mercury and Capricorn is good at helping you figure out where you need to be to get ahead, and they certainly know how to get ahead themselves. Like the other earth signs, they like money and possessions, but for Capricorn, it is much more involved with status. They want to be seen to be well-to-do or seen to be successful. And unfortunately, that can be so important to them that when they do take a tumble or they have a loss, it can really knock them down a lot more than other people because they feel how much it reflects on themselves, cardinal sign, right? But they may be very blunt and to the point. But Mercury and Capricorn, I call them street smart because they're not always educated. In fact, they may quit school. They freak out parents because they're the ones that quit halfway through college, university. But stay with Mercury and Capricorn and you watch them. They often break the rules because they need to do things their way. And you know what? When they're allowed to do that, very often they'll be a great success. They may be attracted more to working with the trades, but hey, those people make a lot of money and we need people with skilled trades. So if you think that your Mercury and Capricorn child, for example, should be a doctor or some other academic, well, if they want to be a plumber, you go ahead and let them be because they'll be very successful regardless. They may break the rules, Mercury and Capricorn, and you know what? They don't care. They are their own person, but you know what? They're the really solid people. Again, earth sign that you can really lean on when you're in trouble. They certainly do take care of their own family and they will take care of themselves too, believe you me. They can really drive a hard bargain in business as well. They're very good business people usually. With Mercury and Aquarius, yes, they're smart. They're an air sign and they can absolutely be brilliant, being that they're ruled by Uranus, the planet of sudden insight and genius thinking. And yes, many Mercury and Aquarius people are genius. And yes, they may be the first ones to tell you that. They do like to show off a little bit about how smart they are sometimes. And in fact, they can be rather snide and sometimes even sarcastic, maybe putting you down because you don't know as much as they do. Not pleasant traits, are they? But, well, welcome to the fixed signs. Mercury and Aquarius can be similar to Mercury and Capricorn. And like, I don't care. I don't really care about you or what you're doing. No, of course they do care. In fact, Mercury and Aquarius very often cares about society. They may work in humanitarian ways. They may work in healthcare or finance or anything, but it is to the benefit of society. Mercury and Aquarius, not so good with the one-to-one communication. It's so hard sometimes for Aquarius to pull out and talk about what they're feeling. So don't expect for a heart-to-heart talk to come too easily with Mercury and Aquarius. But I got to tell you, when they are able of having a good heart-to-heart, oh yes, they can be blunt, to the point, and there's no misunderstanding what they're saying. They can be quite clear with what they're saying. An important thing about Mercury in Aquarius, do not tell them what to do and do not tell them when to do it. That's a general statement for Aquarius anyway, but especially in communication with Mercury and Aquarius, that is very much true. Because they are so brilliant, they may be inclined to working well with computers and technology, but they're just as inclined to the arts and sciences. I know Mercury and Aquarius people who love to draw, and they're great with cartooning or video or other types of recording. And in case of artistic and creative ability, it's probably not going to be traditional. They might be the type that are doing welding to create their art, or they use crazy materials or something like that, mixed media and such, and generally not so traditional perhaps with Mercury and Aquarius. They do make good speakers and writers and communicators as well when they want. They may be a little bit volatile at times, Mercury and Aquarius, and they may be changeable, but they are a fixed sign, and they sometimes a little too stuck in their ideals and a little bit too stubborn about changing their mind. For such a futuristic sign, I find it funny how old-fashioned Mercury and Aquarius can sometimes be as well. With Mercury in Pisces, you have another detail-oriented Mercury placement in mutable signs, and sometimes to a fault. It seems to sometimes take a while for Mercury in Pisces to get to the point. There's a lot of detail, there's a lot of information, and you may have to fish through some of it to find the meat of what they're trying to say. And they may be a little bit confusing in their communication, and they can be easily misunderstood, and Mercury in Pisces might easily misunderstand you. They may also be a little bit sensitive to criticism. Be careful about criticizing Pisces. They can easily take offense, and with Mercury in Pisces, they may get themselves into disagreements and arguments because of the misunderstandings. In fact, Mercury in Pisces in the cardinal and personal houses, not as good as in other places, we'll say. Better for Mercury in Pisces, for example, in the houses of education and the arts, where, their kind of wacky way to communicate can really come out in a very positive way, and that's good. Mercury in Pisces can be excellent teachers, excellent in healthcare as well, and yes, they may be very good with accounting and money, because isn't accounting very detail-oriented, right? Especially when Mercury in Pisces in the second or eighth house or other work houses. They may be a little bit difficult sometimes to please because they can be a little ornery and hard to understand, as I said. And as well, Mercury in Pisces may get involved in the victim-perpetrator games, and they may believe that, oh, I've done so much for you and you've done nothing for me, and all this emotional blackmail stuff. It's very hard to win an argument sometimes with Mercury in Pisces, because like Mercury in Gemini, they can weasel themselves out of things quite easily. Sometimes Mercury in Pisces is a little slippery like a fish, if you know what I mean. And so, yes, when it comes to honesty as well, boy, can they stretch the truth sometimes. Other times, of course, Mercury in Pisces are very honorable and very truthful. It's not like they're all dishonest, not at all. They just can be fond of hyperbole as well, and they love to stretch a story somewhat. And yes, they may also be very entertaining. In fact, they may be very good at singing, like Mercury in Taurus, which I forgot to mention. So in general, with Mercury in Pisces as well, you have people who are attracted to art, healthcare, sciences, and also spirituality. Not only are they good speakers, they may be very good ministers or work in religious or other such areas and do very well there. In general, you have a Mercury placement that can be close to their heart. And so that's why they can be a little sensitive, but they're also very compassionate and very caring about other people very often too. So there you have a trip through with Mercury through the signs. I hope you've also will watch the video about Mercury through the houses and the modes. Thanks for joining me.